Luka looks lethal again, but does it make the Lakers a serious threat out west? Out east, the Knicks can't seem to beat any serious threats. The Sixers consider a shutdown, and is nostalgia killing the NBA? That's all today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and we are available wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm Doug Branson, host of Locked On Hornets, and your Shot Clock Sherpa, guiding you through the NBA's biggest stories with the help of Locked On's local experts. And with me are two of Locked On's premier national NBA experts from the Locked On Nuggets podcast and senior NBA writer for the Action Network. He's the man of 1,000 podcasts, Matt Moore.
I think I would give a very important organ for Amen Thompson. I would give like a very important, like not like a lung, but like a pretty important organ for Amen Thompson.
I think there are a couple of organs you have a couple of, right? So I think you could spare one of those. A kidney, a liver. No, liver is only one. I think
liver is only one.
Okay. And from the Locked On Bulls podcast, I don't know what his medical knowledge is, but I do know that he is the Prince of Petty. It's Hayes.
I've diagnosed the Chicago Bulls front office with generational incompetence. That's my extent. Yeah.
That's very good. All right. Ever since the insane trade that sent Luka Doncic to the Lakers, fans have been waiting for the old Luka to show up, and he finally did this weekend with 32 points to lead Los Angeles to a decisive victory over the Denver Nuggets, ending Denver's 9-game winning streak. This win has sparked talk about the Lakers' potential as serious contenders in the Western Conference. Matt, we'll start with you. Do you think that this dynamic duo can sustain this momentum and position the Lakers as more than just a fun pick for Western Conference champions?
I think they're in that conversation. I think that they're in the discussion point here because of what they're able to bring to the table. I don't trust this defense yet. I still don't trust it. Nuggets were so sloppy with their turnovers. That was a big part of their defensive effort. Their actual half-court offense wasn't great in that game. There's a lot of interesting things about that game that we talked about in Locked On Nuggets. I do think the Lakers are a threat as much as the Nuggets are, as much as the Grizzlies are, as much as the Rockets, as much as the Clippers, as much as the Warriors, who we'll talk about tomorrow. Like, they're all in that kind of conversation. But one thing I would note, every team that has made a serious run in the West, the Rockets, they're the number 2 team in the West. Are they serious? Oh, no, there they go. Oh, the Grizzlies, look at the Grizzlies. They're so, no, there they go as well. The Nuggets have won 9 in a row. Who could say, oh, no, there they go. Like, we've just seen this. There's the Thunder and there's everybody else. I think the Lakers are any less or more serious than any of those teams, Hayes.
I need to see a lot more from the Lakers over, the remainder of the season before I'm ready to call them contenders. We know that they're a talented team that are going to win some basketball games. I think when you combine Luka and LeBron, you're going to win some basketball games. It was a fun game to watch them against the Denver Nuggets. They're good, but that defense is still hugely questionable. We don't know how much bench production they're going to get consistently. So those things are still questions there that I have for the Los Angeles Lakers before I'm willing to say how far they can go in the Western Conference or not. But I'm enjoying seeing this process so far. I'm enjoying watching Luka and LeBron play together and Luka start finding this rhythm. All that's fun and great to watch. I just need to see a bigger sample size before I can say for sure.
Yeah, and Matt, you mentioned the defense and also like the offensive distribution. You had 4 players score over 20 points, Doncic, James, Reeves, Rui Hachimura, and then relatively nothing from, the rest of the bench and the remaining starter there. So I think there's some questions about sort of the sustainability of that.
Yeah. On the other hand, the playoffs, you're going to shorten your rotation. Like, their plan is like they didn't, and this was the consequence of the trade. They weren't going to have depth. They lost 2 players for 1. So they were just going to be short on them. This was in the team that had great depth anyway. They got some guys I think that can probably contribute, but yeah, the formula is going to be Luka does everything. LeBron does a lot. And then everybody else kind of fills in, and we'll see if Rui Hachimura can be that third guy for them or not.
I want to ask about the Nuggets end of this as well, but first let's go to Locked On Lakers, who were discussing some interesting comments post-game from J.J. Redick and how quickly this Lakers team should become Luka's team.
After last night's win over Denver, which featured the first night of Luka Doncic really looking like Luka Doncic, looking like, as a few guys referred to him, a quote-unquote killer out on the court. JJ said afterwards, quote, "I think Luka needs to be the guy that controls the offense."
The biggest difference between Denver on Saturday and the other games is Luka played really well. I don't know anybody who's sitting there arguing that, like, Luka, it shouldn't be Luka as the primary, the primary orchestrator, your primary point guard, the offense running, however you want to phrase it. He is, by all accounts, one of the 5 best players on the planet.
And the unspoken but obvious part of that was you are messaging that it is Luka's franchise moving forward. He is priority number 1, even if that means ruffling LeBron's feathers in the process.
Okay, Hayes, do you see a future problem here if things shift so quickly to Luka Doncic being the one that controls the offense and not LeBron James? Is that something that could cause them problems in the offseason, or do you see that impacting them the rest of the way this season?
I don't think that it's a problem. I think that it's best for the team. I think that's why you brought Luka Doncic in. I think the players around it are aware enough to understand that that's the point. That's where this is going. If anybody has any doubts that this thing is going to be more built around Luka, then they're just behind the 8 ball on that one. So no, I don't foresee it causing any issues or problems as they look to reconstruct the team around Luka and the players that are still there. I think that's what's best. That's what should happen here.
Yeah, I'll say this. They basically dared LeBron. Like they moved his clutch buddy under the cover of night suddenly without consulting them. And then they in the aftermath of that, LeBron could have maneuvered his way out. And what instead did you hear? LeBron is committed to the Lakers. He might re-sign with them. Basically, the Lakers were like, they called his bluff and were like, "You're no longer in charge. Do you want to leave LA?" And LeBron went, "No, I guess not. Okay." And now, honestly, this is what he's been asking for, though. He's wanted Anthony Davis to be the best player on this Lakers team for years. And guess what? It never happened. And now he finally has a player who will actually step up and be the best player on the team. So he doesn't have to carry that much at age 40. This is a win for LeBron. Even if he loses a little bit of pride in the process, I think he's happy with the outcome.
Matt, are you worried about Denver's chances in a hypothetical playoff series against the Lakers? And did this is one game, but did it signal to you anything about their weaknesses? The 9-game winning streak looked great until you put the microscope on it a little bit and said, well, there weren't really great teams, no top 10 teams in there. What did this loss say about the Nuggets?
I think the big thing is that you're like, are you worried about the Lakers in a hypothetical matchup? I'm worried about the Bulls for the Nuggets in a hypothetical matchup. I'm worried about not the Hornets, but I'm worried about most teams in a hypothetical matchup for the Nuggets. That defense, their backline defense with their base defensive coverage is pretty broken. And specifically, you know who it struggles against? Big, tall passers who can jump over the at-level play in pick and roll. Who's really good at that? LeBron James and Luka Doncic. So no, it's not great. I will tell you that I did some film work and we talked about this on Locked On Nuggets, and I understand it sounds like copium. I'm just telling you, I'm not a Nuggets fan. I'm telling you, the Lakers threw the kitchen sink at the Nuggets in that game. And the Nuggets went, okay. And that was pretty much it. One team played like this was their Super Bowl, and one team played like this was a baseball game in June. It was a very different approach to this game from those two teams.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it at all for the Nuggets. Listen, the Nuggets are who they are. As long as they have Jokic, as long as they have Jamal Murray, the chemistry between him and Russell Westbrook as well this season, between Jokic and Westbrook, that has been great. This is a team that they've seen it. They've been through the battles. Yeah, they don't have as much depth as what they had at one point in time with that bench. You don't look at that necessarily as the same thing they had in their championship year, but this is a Nuggets team that adapts, and they can throw so many different things at you and looks at you. As long as Jokic is in rhythm and he's healthy, I'm not worried about the Denver Nuggets at all.
Matt, you and your co-host Ryan Blackburn on Locked On Nuggets on the latest episode had an interesting discussion after this game about the sort of tiers of the Western Conference, and you firmly put the Thunder in Tier 1, but then Tier 2 you had Memphis, Denver, and the Lakers in that second tier, but you left the Rockets out, and no mention of the Clippers, I noticed as well. So Hayes, Do you like that as the tier set up for the West? Grizzlies, Nuggets, Lakers in tier 2, or would you put Houston in there as well?
First of all, I love anything that does not have any mention of the Clippers. So, by the way, good job there. But as far as, I put the Rockets still in tier 2 as well. I know that they have their problems. They're a young team that hasn't done it before, but I still like them in tier 2.
Can't score in the clutch. Who are they going to? Look, if you buy Jalen Green, if you want to buy Jalen Green stock, by all means. And if you want the Clippers, you're taking the 21st ranked offense, schedule adjusted. Good luck. You can have them. I'm all right.
Golden State has won 3 games in a row. Right now, the 9th seed. But if they keep playing like this, we might be revisiting this discussion and adding the Warriors to the second tier. And we'll talk more about them tomorrow. But coming up on today's episode of the Locked On NBA podcast, we shift our focus to the Eastern Conference, where there's some great things happening in Boston, but a lot of sad things happening across the rest of the conference. Joel Embiid, some existential career stuff going on with the knee injury, and then the Knicks. They can't seem to beat any good teams. We'll talk about all of it coming up on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, get ready. They swoosh. You save thanks to Dash Pass. Every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal the next day. It's very simple. When any player scores 50 or more in a game during the 24-25 NBA regular season, Dash Pass members are going to get 50% off an order up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight. Here's how to take advantage of the deal. After an epic 50-point performance, celebrate by ordering wings, pizza, or burgers from your favorite spot delivered straight to your door. Staying up late to watch some highlights, or you need a midnight snack? Use Dash Pass to grab something delicious while saving big. If you need a quick and easy lunch the next day, Dash Pass gets you your favorite meals with $0 delivery fees and reduced service fees. Plus, now you save even more with this exclusive NBA offer. Planning to catch the next game? Order go-to snacks and meals at a discount and get ready for more high-scoring action. Sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save when any player scores 50 or more in a game. Dash Pass members get 50% off an order the next day, up to $10 off. Just use promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team has a free and daily newsletter. Go to LockedOnDaily.com and subscribe to stay up to date with local expert analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shear, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball tips from the great Josh Lloyd. Sunday night, ESPN reported that Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers are exploring alternative options for handling Embiid's persistent knee injury, including surgery that would shut him down for the remainder of this season. Embiid last underwent knee surgery in February of last year to repair a torn meniscus. Few have watched Joel closer this season than Kayla Santiago of Locked On 76ers, and she's certain about what the next steps should be.
Only the knee, but it's everything else he's been doing in a situation where his team is bad and they need him to be a leader if he can on the sidelines, or somebody that's in practice helping his guys out, or in team meetings trying to get everybody focused. And he just hasn't been that guy because he can't be focused, and it's clearly getting to him as well. And I think the biggest thing for me, and why I say that the time needs to come to an end this season, if that surgery needs to happen, it needs to happen soon, is because on defense, he is struggling so bad. He's tough getting back. He's not boxing guys out. He's not rebounding. He's not going up for those big blocks. I just think right now there is no reason for him to not be shut down, in addition to he is hurting his team. And in the past it was, well, if 50% Joel Embiid is better than no Joel Embiid. Right now, that is not the case at all.
Hayes, are we witnessing the beginning of the end of Joel Embiid's season, or are we witnessing the beginning of the end of his career?
I won't say the beginning of the end of his career yet. I won't say that, but I will say this. We need to start witnessing the beginning of the end of his time in Philly. That's what needs to happen here. It's time for Philly to move on from Joel Embiid. It's time for them to start building around Tyrese Maxey. They have a great chance to add a nice pick if they can stay within the top 6 of the draft this year, and then start building around Maxey, the new pick, Jared McCain, and just a younger overall core and see what they can do. I love Joel Embiid. When Joel Embiid's healthy, he's a special player to watch. He's great. But unfortunately, the time that you're getting less and less of healthy Joel Embiid as this career goes on. So I think, I don't know about the career. We've seen players make a bounce back, so I'm not willing to make that call yet. But the time for him to be in Philly is starting to come to an end. It needs to come to an end this summer.
I don't know. And I don't know how anybody can have an answer on this. I think you have to have an extensive access to the medical history. I think you need to have the medical knowledge of what his long-term prognosis is going to be for a guy of his size. How much strength and recovery is going to be necessary if he has the surgery again? What does that mean for him? Is it going to be, because there's talk of a transplant, of a meniscus transplant out there. I don't know if that's a viable option. I have no idea. There's just no way to know how the body is going to respond over time. The future is unknowable, right? There's existential questions here, but also just if we watch the history of players' careers, there are guys that were always injury plagued and they got to have a final chapter that was free of those concerns in lesser roles. And that may be what happens with Embiid, but I just don't know how, they're stuck. You can't make a decision. There's no good decision to make here. And I don't necessarily know that there's anything that we can really do to try and evaluate what they should or should not do. This is too complicated, too thorny, and there's too many unknowns, I think, to have any sort of real opinion on.
Matt, going back to Hayes' point on the 76ers moving on from Joel Embiid in the summer, I'd like your thoughts on that. Plus, if that decision is that decision made by Daryl Morey or by someone else?
Oh boy. I think that's an ownership question, right? That's a direction of the franchise question. That's got a lot to do with how much money do you want on the books? Do you want to pivot to a new rebuild? I think what are your priorities? If ownership is we want to make the playoffs, okay, well, the fastest way for us to make the playoffs and compete is Embiid. That's our most direct line. We can pursue other options, but they're not guaranteed. Embiid, if he's able to play, gets you into that position. You can be well, what about this season? It's fair, but that's obviously Embiid at 80% of his version gets you within range of the playoffs. And so that's a directive. If they're we're ready for a new direction, we want to pivot that way, we want to keep the pick. Those are all, I think, things that you have to evaluate. I think it's really complicated because you're not just talking about, look at the Luka Doncic thing, right? And I think the relationship between Embiid and Philly fans is a little bit more tenuous, especially you've heard the booing and stuff like that. But there are a lot of people that love him, and there are a lot of people that define their fandom around him. And so I don't think it's a simple equation. He means a lot to fans of that franchise, more than he probably, if we're going to be real, probably should. But he does. And I think that has to factor into the conversation. Again, Hayes, I don't know how to parse any of this with how tricky and how unfortunate and just truly depressing the whole thing has become.
I think the thing, too, that you pointed out is a potential meniscus transplant, which is something that Lonzo Ball had with Chicago. And if I remember correctly, they say at minimum, you get that transplant, you're looking at 16 months. So if that's the case, if you're getting a cadaver meniscus put in, you're looking at 16 months. Like I said, that's all those things going into that is why I say it's time for Philly to potentially move on. Now, there is a really good, Lonzo's looked great. His shot hasn't fallen, but as far as all the physicals, his ability to play defense, all that's there. And I know everybody's different. I can't say that it's going to be the same for Joel Embiid, but it does seem like that may be a viable option. But that is one that if he goes that route, I don't know if Philly has the time to wait on that.
Yeah, everyone's different, and I think people largely viewed Lonzo's comeback as somewhat miraculous. That no one had ever done that before. So, interesting situation that Philadelphia finds itself in. But speaking of teams with existential issues, the New York Knicks faced two elite Eastern Conference teams over the weekend and went 0-2 in blowout fashion. The Knicks are now 0-7 against the Cavs, Celtics, and Thunder. Here's Locked On Knicks with their take on why an infusion of new talent hasn't translated to quality wins.
Getting beaten by the same things over and over by these really good teams, leaving Mitchell too open, not sticking with him on the perimeter. Sort of a similar thing in this game. Boston, they came in and almost immediately started going to the thing that was killing the Knicks in the last game, which was having Jason Tatum bring the ball down the floor, having him run the pick and roll, forcing the Knicks to get over screens or, be creative with how they would, show out to him. A lot of coaches would have come into this game with the thought process of let's try something different against Boston because nothing that we've done has worked previously. And yet I feel like Thibs's mentality is, well, we just didn't execute well enough last time. So we just have to be more perfect at what we do this time. And I just don't think that works when you're trying to figure out how to beat these best teams. It does make you wonder if at some point they're going to have to make the tough decision and say, hey, Thibs, thanks so much for getting us here, but you're not the guy to get us over the top.
All right, Matt, we'll start with you. What do you think? Are the Knicks' issues beating great teams rooted in Thibs being stuck in his ways? Is it a roster construction issue, or do they need certain players to step up in some way that they haven't in these kinds of games?
It's a roster construction issue that isn't being accounted for enough by coaching. There's degrees of this, right? And that's not a cop-out answer. They built initially a build based off of switch all, right? Like that's what their advantage was last year was, oh, hey, we've got the switch all system with Isaiah Hartenstein. Then they add Mikal Bridges for 5 first-round draft picks. And that's fine because that still builds into that. Hey, we added another good wing defender. We've got all these wings we can throw at Boston. And sure, Jalen Brunson's small, but we can cover for him with everybody else. But then you get an opportunity to trade Julius Randle for Cat, and that's too much of a talent upgrade. And you talk yourself into it with, well, okay, it's a stretch 5 to counter Porzingis. But then you put this all together, and you can't switch all when you have Brunson and Cat. With one on the floor, you can switch, but not with both on the floor. So what do you wind up doing? You wind up playing at level. So you have a small guard and a slow-footed big trying to play. Cat's much better at level, but that doesn't really work with Brunson. So you wind up playing drop. They played drop 48% of the time versus Boston. You are dead in the water if you do that. It's over. They can't guard the slips. They can't guard the split action. They have all these dynamics they cannot do because half of their team was built one way and half of the team was built another. And then on top of it, Thibs isn't flexible enough to go to different options. They do not have the answers versus these top tier teams. And unfortunately, that means to me they are unserious as a contender.
Yeah, I mean, the record against top tier teams is hugely alarming. I do think that it is a roster construction problem. They don't have the ability to do some of the things that Thibs has typically liked to do over the course of his coaching career. I do think that the most of this roster is fine, right? I think they just need to make a couple of key changes and acquisitions. And I know Mitchell Robinson is still on his way coming back. I don't think that changes enough for this New York Knicks team. Me and Gavin actually had a conversation about that on Locked On NBA Friday night. I just don't think the Mitchell Robinson coming back is going to be enough personally. I know he's been really good in the advanced analytics for them defensively at times, but I think this team is going to have to find a different defensive gear to go to. The offense is fine. You get to where you need to get defensively. If you can stay around middle of the pack defensively in the NBA, then maybe that'll be better off for them. But they're going to have to really look at making some key changes this offseason, I think.
And the Knicks didn't even have to deal with Flames Peyton Pritchard. He was one of the worst players by game score in that game after just absolutely torching Philadelphia from 3. So they didn't have to deal with that. All right, let us know what you think about the Knicks and the Sixers. Big issues for both teams on YouTube, youtube.com/@LockedOnNBA. Coming up, there was a lot that happened this weekend. I've got to get some rapid reactions from Matt and Hayes on some storylines throughout the NBA. Plus, I want to shift things back to the positive because the Thunder, the Cavs, the Celtics, they all made big statements this weekend in their own different ways. So I want to ask them who made the biggest statement. That's all coming up on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, live bets can be placed throughout the game. If you miss the opening tip-off, no big deal. Want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback? You can stay in the action. Looking for a bigger payout? Continue live bets into a same-game parlay. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for a shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. More Locked On NBA ahead. Welcome back to Locked On NBA. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. The last segment was a lot of sad, and so I want to close with some positives. The Thunder, Cavs, and Celtics, all in their own ways, made serious statements as they shook off the All-Star break rust. Let's go around the Locked On local expert horn to hear from Danny Cunningham, Rylan Stiles, and John Corrales.
Garland, and he was listed with a hip injury too for this game. But for the rest of the Cavs to step up and play the way that they did in his absence, especially by being able to do the little things, I think to me that's the sign of a really great team.
The Oklahoma City Thunder needed a challenge like the Minnesota Timberwolves brought tonight in a playoff-like game, and they won it. SGA was fantastic. Chet Holmgren continues to find his stride on the offensive end, and the Thunder's offense, by and large, got a lot better this game compared to where they were to start this double big lineup.
The Celtics have now won 5 straight games. Each of their 5 straight wins has been by at least 13 points. They've won 9 of their last 10, 12 of their last 15. They've beaten the Knicks twice. They've beaten the Cavs over the last 7 games. The Celtics are, I think you can say, back. All of the questions about the swoon, I think those have been answered.
I love it. A lot of teams back, a lot of players back on this edition of Locked On NBA. Hayes, who made the biggest statement over the weekend? Was it the Thunder, the Cavs, the Boston Celtics? I'll also give you the freedom to choose a player because Jason Tatum, SGA, Evan Mobley for the Cavs all stood out to me this weekend.
To me, it's still the Thunder. What the Thunder are doing in the margin of victory in which they have is impressive. I get that why people have their doubts about them and their ability to win a title this year, but I just look at this Thunder's team they still haven't reached their ceiling yet. They still haven't reached how good I think they can be just in this season. And so for that, to see what the Thunder continue to do, how they continue to win, how they continue to dominate, and at this point, it's almost like you just expect it. So I'd say it continues to be the Thunder just because the way that they've sustained their margin of victory for this long has been hugely impressive to me.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about players. I mean, I think there's really only one answer here, though, and it has to do with the number 32-5, the record the Cavaliers have when Dean Wade plays. I will also say Ty Jerome, I thought had a really great weekend. I think he put himself back in the 6th man of the year race with his performance, especially versus the Grizzlies. Derek White, I thought continues to be absolutely just sensational for the Celtics. If you're approaching a Celtics game, I honestly think you need to start with how do we shut down Derek White? Like that needs to be where you start because everyone's going to start with Jason Tatum, head of the snake. Tatum's amazing. He's awesome, but you also kind of have to live with it the same way you have to live with a lot of the best players in the league. I don't think you can take him away. Focus on Derek White and start there because he's so pivotal for what they do. I thought this was a great weekend for the role players of those teams to all show what they're capable of.
OKC will get another chance at Minnesota, or I guess we should say Minnesota will get another chance against OKC tonight. It's a back-to-back home and home, so that'll be an interesting matchup. Make sure to check out Locked On NBA Game Time for a recap. It's on this feed. All right, a lot happened over the weekend, and I'm really curious what Matt and Hayes think. So let's close with some rapid reactions. First, we go to San Antonio, where Spurs legendary head coach Greg Popovich is not expected to return this season as he continues to recover from a mild stroke suffered in November. Also, there seems to be some uncertainty over his future with the team. Matt, just your reaction to that news.
This sucks. This sucks. Yeah. This sucks. This sucks. I hate this. He should be able to go out on his terms, the way that he wants to. If he's done, then he should be able to hang it up and be able to do that and say goodbye to the Spurs fans and organization. I hope he gets better. This sucks.
Yeah. To recap what Matt said there, like it just sucks. That's the plain way. Like I would hope that Greg Popovich will get like this long tour whenever he does decide to hang it up. And it sucks that this could be the end of it for him.
Very difficult season for San Antonio overall. The Golden State Warriors honored Andre Iguodala's pivotal role in their dynasty by retiring his number 9 jersey in a ceremony at Chase Center. What do you think about a role player getting his jersey retired, Hayes? You in favor of this?
No, generally not. But I mean, to each their own for each franchise. I don't think role players should get jerseys retired because that should be something special for the upper echelon. But he was really important. Heck, he won the finals MVP, if I'm not mistaken. So that's true. That could be enough.
If he doesn't go there, the dynasty doesn't happen. He was that pivotal to changing the culture of the organization and putting them in a position to be able to win. He was the guy that was willing to sacrifice to do all the stuff that made them special. His defense was absolutely elite back in the day. He was a really phenomenal player. I think it's really good that they've decided to honor him, because sometimes it's not just about the stuff on the court. It's about what you contributed to the organization. And Iguodala gave a lot to that franchise.
As someone that covers a team that has not retired a jersey for any active on-court contributions, I would say I'm totally in favor of this. In fact, I think we shouldn't be so sacrosanct about. I think jersey retirements should be franchise relative. I think franchises should be more okay with saying, like, for example, Kemba Walker and all of his contributions to the Charlotte Hornets should be honored, even though he might not go into the Hall of Fame, even though the Hornets didn't win a playoff series with him in tow.
They didn't retire Zoe's jersey?
No, there's no Bobby Phillips.
Oh my God. Okay.
Bobby Phillips, the only retired Hornet for a tragic accident that took his life. Yeah.
Horrible. Okay.
That's crazy.
All right, final thing. Former NBA champion Channing Frye sparked debate by claiming that nostalgia for the 90s era is, quote, killing the NBA, suggesting that the idolizing of past legends like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant undermines appreciation for today's stars. Hayes, where are you on this one? Is nostalgia killing the NBA?
No, I think the way people have conversations around nostalgia can be, because you should be what they did actually should make it more impressive than what some of these players do. We only get into a problem where we try to compare eras, and we get into this conversation of, oh, this guy's better than this guy being better. You can celebrate and remember nostalgia, but use that to inform how you celebrate the guys and what they're doing now, rather than being this constant state of comparing them. At least that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just tough because it's impossible for us to contextualize things. And this is one of the tricks that you learn if you do a lot of research on basketball. Your memory is not sufficient. You can't remember everything. You remember all the amazing shots these guys made, and you don't remember any of the misses. 45% is a really good field goal percentage. That means you miss 55% of the time. So we're not able to really contextualize a lot of how this stuff happens. We're not able to put a lot of stuff into context. We don't remember what defenses look like. We don't remember what the game looked like. These moments live in our head because they stand out to us, but that's over-indexing them. The human brain is not possible. It's not capable of putting things into perspective the way that they need, which is why I think you have to rely on things beyond that in order to really understand them.
And the thing about nostalgia is that it shifts. So, I mean, there are generations of players, including one of the Hornets' future stars, hopefully, in Brandon Miller. His greatest of all time player is Paul George, because that's the guy that he grew up idolizing. So as these guys all grow up, those idols will start to shift.
I'm just loving the idea of in 15 years, someone being like, God, the game just sucks now. Everybody just makes all their baskets. Why can't we go back to when the game was great, when SGA was drawing free throws every play? That was real basketball.
Let us know what you think on YouTube, youtube.com/@LockedOnNBA. Hit us up in the comments. If you like what you heard today, subscribe to Locked On NBA wherever you get podcasts, including on YouTube. Thanks so much for making Locked On NBA your first listen. Enjoy tonight's action. Be kind to each other. And we're going to see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On NBA.